Hello! Welcome to our 5th video in our 4-act series. I got it right that time. We are talking about not the AC! Oh my god, I forgot to turn it off. Wow, the AC was really like, I want to be in on this. No. So we are talking about the 4-act plot structure and how it fits into a real-life story, the best story of all time, Megamind. And yes, I am a professional dark fantasy sci-fi action writer, and Megamind is the best story ever told. So we are looking today at Act 4. If you haven't seen the other videos in this series, you can look right here. We've just been discussing all of the acts of this structure in depth, and we are here at the last one. So exciting! Act 4 is the resolution. It's where everything in your story has been building up to this point, and it all comes to a climax, and things either fall apart or come together. And so it's important. It's a big moment in your story. It's what everything has been leading up to. The whole story has been setting up this act. So it's important we get it right. Now, most writers struggle with knowing what to do in the middle of their book, and so the 4-act structure is really helpful with that because it splits Act 2 into Act 2 and Act 3, and it really gives you a more definitive idea of what to do in those spots. So if you are like most writers, you might feel a little bit more confident going into plotting Act 4 of your story. I do want to point out, if you have any issues with Act 4 in your story or your book or whatever it is you're making, the issue is not going to be in your final act, it will be in your first act. So any problem you are running into now, you need to go back to the first act and figure out why it's happening. And if you do this before you start writing, it's going to save you so much time. And if you do it after you've started writing, then you learned so much already, and that's beautiful. In Act 4, we have the revival, or break into 4, the climax, and the final image. Let's start with the revival. So as you might remember, Act 3 is where your character gets hit with the disaster. They're like brought to their knees. They're having a hard time. They go through their dark moment, they have their aha moment, they learn the theme, and learning the theme allows them to come back to life. And so that's why I named the first beat of Act 4 the revival, because it's literally your character reviving and re-energizing and saying, okay, I can still do this. There's still, and they know their need now. So the disaster in Act 3, I don't know if I said this in the last video, but the disaster in Act 3, the point of it is to show the character that what they want is not what they need. So in my story circle video, we went over Mulan. In that movie, the disaster plot beat is when the army finds out she's a woman and they leave her in the mountains and they're like, you're not in the army anymore. We won't kill you, but you're not in the army anymore because you're a woman. And that's when she realizes that her desire to bring honor to her family isn't as important as her need to be accepted as who she is. She learns finally that she's good enough, and she doesn't need to bring honor in the traditional way to be good enough. And so she then has the strength to go to the city and fight the Huns, even though she just got kicked out of the army. So that's what the point of the disaster is to show your character, hey, you might want this thing, but it's really not what you should be aiming for. It's really not the end goal. After that, your character learns the theme and we move into the revival. So the revival is like this in-between space. It's a little bit of a break. If you've seen my videos on scenes and sequels, then you will know what I'm referencing when I say that this is kind of a sequel moment. It's kind of like, okay, a lot of stuff just happened. We have to take a step back and recalibrate and think about what we're gonna do next. So this is where the character gets up, dusts themselves off, and starts prepping for the climax. The climax you'll see in a second, or you already know if you've seen my overview video of the 4-act structure. It contains 5 parts, and a couple of those parts are gathering the team and executing the plan. This is kind of the moment where the character goes, okay, who is going to be on my team? Like, what is the plan? This is kind of when that stuff is being created. So you can't gather a team if you haven't defined who's on it. You can't execute a plan if you haven't made the plan. So this is the part where that stuff happens. And of course, at this point, your character should be pretty much like a bulldozer. Like, they should be ready and willing to do whatever it takes to get to their need. So in Megamind, the revival is when Minion talks to the warden, and we think it's the warden, and he confesses a bunch of stuff about how he feels bad about how he treated Minion, and we learn a lot about what's going on internally, emotionally for Megamind, for our beautiful supervillain hero.
Titan has to be stopped. Sorry, Megamind, you still have 88 life sentences to go. Plenty of time to reflect on what you've done.
That you want to hear me say it. I'll say it. Here it is, from the blackest part of my heart. I am sorry.
So that is our revival. Megamind kind of, through listening to Roxanne, realizes the theme, right? Realizes that he can be the good guy and that Roxanne needs him to be and the city needs him to be, and decides to accept that call and accept the fact that heroes, as Roxanne stated at the beginning of the show, they're not born, they're made. And so he accepts the fact that he is being made into a hero right now. So then he's talking to the warden, and then we see that the warden becomes Minion. So it's actually Minion there to get him out of the jail. And Megamind's like, what? Oh my god. So then we go into the climax. The climax has 5 parts: gathering the team, executing the plan, the high tower surprise, which I love, digging deep down, and executing the new plan. So the climax is a big moment, you guys. I wonder if you know this. This is the one moment that your entire story has been leading up to. I cannot stop singing Climax by Usher in my head. So the entire time you have been preparing your character to face the antagonistic force, and this is it. This is the moment when we get to see, did they learn what they needed to? Did they take the theme to heart? Did they become the changed person that they need to be to beat this villain, to fight this antagonistic force? And if they do win against the antagonist, it means that they finally get their need. Unless you're negative arcs, like they can beat the antagonist and still not get their need, but whatever. Or in series, they can beat the antagonist and still not get their need, because the series is the needs later. But for our intents and purposes, this is their chance to beat the antagonist and reach their need. So each of the 5 parts of the climax is so important. Don't be playing around thinking that one is lesser than the other. It's not how it works. They're all crucial. So let's start with gathering the team. Like I said in our overview video for this story structure, unless you're writing some kind of survival story where your character meets no one, your character has been meeting people throughout their entire story. And this is the moment that they decide who of those people they need on their team to face this bad guy. And of course, it depends on the severity of the bad guy, right? This could come in the form of your character amassing this huge army to fight some big sorcerer, or it could be your character remembering all the advice they received from friends and family and conquering their biggest fear by themselves, but gathering the team internally. So gathering the team in Megamind looks like this. Minion picks up Megamind from the jail, and they leave the jail, and that's it. Obviously, they're going to go save Roxanne, but that's their whole team, right? It's just him and Minion, which is proof that your character doesn't need a huge team of people. They just need their people. Whoever their people are. It could be one person. It could be Minion. Okay, next is executing the plan. Back in the revival plot beat, the character made a plan for how they are going to approach this antagonist to try and get their need. And the most important part, I think, of this beat is that this plan needs to draw on what they've been learning throughout their entire experience. That is so important, because if their plan doesn't come from a space of, I learned this in Act 2 during fun and games, or I learned this in my aha moment, if that stuff doesn't come in here, it's gonna feel like, okay, why the hell did we go through and learn all that stuff? Like, why did we waste our time doing that? So don't forget to recall during this plot beat, and in the revival when they're making the plan, don't forget to recall to stuff they've learned already. That's very important. But this is where they put that plan into action. And in Megamind, this is when he shows up to fight Titan and rescue Roxanne. Minion, I think, literally asks, like, what's the plan? And Megamind goes, well, it mostly involves not dying. So we get a little moment of, like, we can see that Megamind's kind of thinking on his feet, and he's kind of creating the plan as he goes.
What's the plan?
Well, it mostly involves not dying.
I like that plan.
But there is some semblance of a plan there, right? The plan is get out of jail, get Roxanne, stop Titan, save the city. Next is the high tower surprise. This is so crucial to a successful climax because the readers know there's going to be a climax. The readers know that everything, I mean, we literally, it's amazing. If you look at stories where the author had no plot structure to look at and no idea what plot structure even was, there will be a plot structure there. That's part of why I love the story circle, because Dan Harmon studied all these stories that people didn't necessarily plot them. People weren't trying to follow a certain, structure or skeleton, but they came out with structure because we are storytellers. It's like in our DNA to tell stories and to know how to tell stories, to know what makes a good story. The readers instinctually know that there is going to be a climax. And if you don't have some kind of climax at the end of your book, I understand, like, if you're writing a flowery literary fiction that's slower and more metaphorical, have some semblance of like a peak of like, we've reached where we've been trying to go. It doesn't need to be massive, but readers are expecting that. They need that from a story. They need that feeling of kind of victory and conquering the big hurdle. So they know the climax is coming, but that doesn't keep it from being boring. Like, if your climax was literally like, okay, we're gonna go fight this bad guy, and then they win, and there's no like sense of surprise or shock or like having to regroup at all during it, it's just gonna feel not satisfying. It's gonna feel unearned, and it's gonna feel 2D. It's gonna fall flat. It's not gonna be an emotional hit like your climax should be, and it's not gonna be exciting. Climaxes should be exciting, and your climax will not be without this. So the high tower surprise is crucial. This is where your character is hit with something they didn't expect. Something comes along and stops them in the middle of the climax and throws them off their game, and they stumble, they lose their balance, they fall, they are completely off kilter for a second because this high tower surprise is just smacks them. The high tower surprise in Megamind comes when Metro Man returns. All of a sudden, he shows up out of nowhere. Like, things are looking pretty grim. Titan's very strong, and people are being overpowered by him, and all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, Metro Man is there again.
Looks like there's only one loose end now.
Please, let's have a little respect for public transportation.
So he comes back and he, like, drives Titan away, right?
So, you're the punk I've heard about.
At that point, it's revealed that Metro Man also has a watch on, and he's not actually Metro Man, he's Megamind. And Megamind likes being good. Like, he likes that feeling of having thrown out the evil and people liking him for it, He likes being the good guy, this is when he really fully starts to realize that. After this comes Dig Deep Down. So at this point, they think that the plan has worked and everything, and the high tower surprise continues when Hal comes back. And they're like, what are you doing? Hey, bud, what's up? And it turns out that Megamind said, stay out of Metrocity and not stay out of Metro City. And so Hal was like, you're not Metro Man. Metro Man never says Metrocity. So he comes back because he knows that it was Megamind. So now everyone's like, shit. Then comes Dig Deep Down. Dig Deep Down is basically the character has to recommit mid-fight. There's not a ton of time. Things are going crazy around them. It's the climax. There's a lot happening. And they have to remind themselves amidst all of this chaos and destruction why they're here, what they need, and why they're even fighting for this in the first place. So they have to dig deep down and return to their misbelief. And I think for Megamind, part of this is being like, I am destined for greatness. Heroes are not born, they're made. Like, this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this. So, executing the new plan. This is basically the character has dug deep down and gotten in touch with their need again and their motivation, their inspiration again. And now they are ready to do whatever it takes to eliminate this threat. So in Megamind, executing the new plan starts when Megamind runs to get his gun to take Hal's power, because there is a setting on his gun that will take Hal's power away. And so he runs to get the gun. He saves himself as he's falling. So we return to the in media res moment at the beginning where he's falling and he's like, this is how my day's been so far, or some stupid line like that. He gets the gun, he saves himself while he's falling. He succeeds in taking Hal's power. As a result, he gets his need. Roxanne loves and accepts him for who he is. And another thing that I like about this, and sorry, let me not get ahead of myself, and everyone else in the town accepts and loves him for who he is too. And he literally is like, oh my god, and Roxanne is like, don't worry, he's just not used to this, because everyone's like coming at him and they're like happy, but he's like, I'm gonna be attacked. It's a very cute moment. But what I was gonna say is that I love the way that they approach the climax, because Megamind isn't necessarily saying, here I am, I'm the hero. He's kind of like, hey, I'm a better bad guy than you. Like, this is how you actually be a bad guy. And so he's kind of still approaching it from the angle of like, being bad is the thing I'm good at. I'm just badder than you are. But he's a good guy. And so I love that, the way that they show that.
Dare challenge Megamind!
This town isn't big enough for 2 supervillains.
Oh, you're a villain, all right. Just not a super one.
Yeah? What's the difference?
Presentation!
Lastly, we have the final image. This is the absolute last part of your story, unless the final image is a cliffhanger and you're writing a series. But this is your moment to wrap up loose ends and to bring the characters and the readers the satisfying resolution that they've all been waiting for, or to solidify how tragic everything is if you are writing a sad story. I keep saying stuff like that because I'm in the middle of writing Burnish, and so I am surrounded by negative arcs. There's so much I want to tell you guys about Burnish! And so you have to make the final image count. It's your last chance to say what you want to say, to teach your readers something, to give your readers the emotional satisfaction they've been dying for this entire time. In Megamind, the final image is when we see that Megamind is good now, and Metro Man's statue is replaced with him. The final image is Roxanne kissing Megamind on the cheek. So it's just kind of a reinforcement that, you know, he has gone through the change, he's become a good guy, he's realized his purpose, his worth. And yeah, it's just a very cute, happy ending. So the lesson that we learn at the end of Megamind, I think this is actually a line that he says, is destiny is not the path given to us, but the path we choose for ourselves. So at the beginning, his dad says you're destined for something, right? And then he lands in jail, and that's the path given to him. But the truth is that it's not, destiny is not the path that's given to us, but the one that we create and the one that we design for ourselves. So it's such a cool movie, you guys. It's so good. Just as a reminder, Megamind fears having no purpose and consequently being worthless. He desires to fight someone so that he can keep his villain identity, so that he can keep his purpose and his worth, and he needs to be good enough as he is, because his misbelief is being bad is the one thing he's good at, and so he thinks that's the only thing he's capable of doing. And he learns in the end that that's not true. He can do anything. He can be a good guy. He can get the girl. So it's just a very cute story that I love so much. It's the best story ever written. So I hope that gave you guys a more in-depth look at the 4-act story structure and how you can use it in your own novels and stories. If you need more in-depth help, I do offer coaching appointments now. The link for that is in the description below. So if you want to talk to me one-on-one about your book and how we can really make it shine and use these tools that I teach about on my channel, go ahead and go to that link and book a session with me. Thank you guys so much for being here and watching. I appreciate your support so much, and I will see you next time. Happy trails.